Thank you for coming along. This is, well, it's actually my second one of these seminars now, but still, please be nice to me. Like I said to everybody yesterday, yesterday was the first one I've ever done like this, so it's brilliant to have you. Thank you. Just brief introductions. I'm Tracey. I'm the blind boater, as I've been flagged up in the magazine. To my left here is Tim doing the techie whizzy stuff, and this is Oakley, who's my guide dog. And I'm just actually going to take his bra off just so it's a bit more comfortable. Okay, lie down. Lie down. Under the table's fine. Okay, bring down. Yes, right. Okay. Just very brief little bit about us. Tim and I, we've been married for nearly 28 years. We've got 2 grown-up daughters and nearly a son-in-law. In 11 weeks we'll gain a son-in-law. And I've had Oakley for just over 2.5 years, so just a very, very brief introduction really. Oakley and I are the first ever, and thus far only, guide dog partnership living and working on the inland waterways. And that through Guide Dogs as an association, a little bit of a curveball, a bit of a challenge, but they've been fantastic. I'll come back to that and tell you a bit more about it. We actually come originally from a village near Worthing in West Sussex, I guess about as far away from the canal network as you can get really. And we now live on our narrowboat Sola Gratia, and we've been living on her for just over a year. In fact, last year's Crick was our inaugural trip, coming here on her. Just a brief outline. Plan for this afternoon really is for me to give you just a few facts and figures about guide dogs, and then a brief resume of our story, and then finish up with questions and answers. I'm a great believer that honesty and openness is actually much better than sort of speculation and wondering and assumptions. So if you've got questions, anything about guide dogs, anything about being blind on the boat, please just ask. Don't be afraid, you won't offend me. It would be great to actually have some interaction going on. That would be really good. So just a few facts and figures about guide dogs first of all. I should clarify at this point that there are guide dogs, the dogs, and there's Guide Dogs, the Association. Now Guide Dogs, the Association is actually technically Guide Dogs for the Blind Association UK. That's a bit of a mouthful. So just to clarify, as I'm talking this afternoon, if I'm talking about guide dogs, I'm talking about the dogs. If I'm saying Guide Dogs UK, I'm talking about the organisation. Just to sort of separate it out a little bit, makes it a bit easier. The slides that are going to be coming up, I just point out that they were compiled in about 2012. I think they are probably a significant underestimation of the numbers now, but I'll quote the figures as they were in 2012. Guide Dogs UK have actually had a massive breeding programme going on over the last couple of years to try and increase the numbers of guide dogs that they're actually producing and training. So in 2012, the figures were that Guide Dogs UK were responsible for over 8,000 dogs. That comprised of 350 breeding stock. They are the brood bitches and the stud dogs, and they actually live with families, volunteer families, who keep them as volunteers. And obviously the brood bitch holder also has the joy of having the puppies born in their home usually, and keeping them until they're about 6 weeks old. The stud dog has even more fun, obviously. But they are kept by volunteers. The vast majority of the real key work of Guide Dogs UK is done by volunteers, and it is just awesome, it really is. Going on, there were at any one given time around about 220 pups with their mums, so that's the ones up to 6 weeks old, still being suckled, still with their mums, and in that volunteer's home. Then there were 1,300 pups actually with puppy walkers. Are there any puppy walkers in? I need to ask you to be very un-British and call out. Zubi's here, brilliant. Can I just take a moment just to honour you guys? Thank you. Without people like you, people like me wouldn't have our freedom and independence. These people are awesome. They take in that 6-week-old bundle of fluff, go through all of the mopping the floors, all of the training of the basic obedience, the life skills, the experiences that the dog is likely to come across in adulthood and when they're in their working life, Then when they've got them through that and got them to a reasonably well-behaved, nice little dog, they give them away. How do you do it? But thank you, you are awesome people, you really are. So yeah, there were about 1,300 pups with their puppy walkers. Then when the pups actually come to around about a year old, the puppy snatcher comes and takes them away from the puppy walkers. And they go into doggy school, doggy high school. And there are about 650 of those in training at a time. There's 2 stages to the training, so I think this 650 encompasses both stages. The first stage is at guide dog school, which is where they're introduced to the harness, where they start to learn the skills of guiding people around obstacles and that kind of thing. Then they go on for the last 3 months of that into advanced training, which is where they then live with a boarder, so they're back in a family environment. And they go to work every day, and they go out with an advanced trainer, and that's working out on the roads, the streets, learning what a zebra crossing is, learning what traffic is, learning how to go to a shop door, how to find a post box, how to find a bin, all that kind of thing. That's their advanced training. So 2 stages in that, 650 pups at that stage, and then about 4,700 and some odd actually working in harness, fully fledged guide dogs, and 760 some odd retired. They retire when they come to round about the age of 10 years, depending on health and circumstances, and if all is well, then round about 10 years. And they then enjoy retirement. They hang up the harness and enjoy their retirement. So that's just the rough figures of the actual dogs. As I say, I'm pretty sure it's bigger numbers than that now, but it gives a rough breakdown, rough idea. Guide Dogs UK are not just about the dogs. Not every visually impaired person, or VIP as we seem to be known, is actually suitable for a dog, and not everybody wants a dog. It's not for everyone. Guide Dogs UK also are involved in giving cane training, so training people to walk using a white cane. I've escaped that so far, because I don't really want to do that. I was actually blessed to get Oakley so quickly, I didn't go through that, but that's maybe something I'll have to face in the future. But they do that, and just general mobility, help and support, learning to get around. They have My Guide training, which is where they train sighted people to guide blind people or visually impaired people. And that's a recognised course that they do. They have Buddy Dogs, which is a relatively new thing, and that's guide dogs that are not quite up to guide dog standard for whatever reason, but have a particular affinity for young children. And buddy dogs are usually an interim between the child and their parent or another adult. And the general idea of it is that a child who is too young to actually have a guide dog, but needs that companionship, that boost of confidence, that something that you can't describe that a dog gives. That's what a buddy dog does. And there's been some fantastic examples of that. So they're actually rolling that scheme out increasingly now. I believe that they've now brought it down that they're actually giving guide dogs to younger people. I think they come down to the age of about 12 or 14 now. It used to be 16, 18. But the buddy dogs is kind of an interim stage to that. Guide Dogs UK are also involved in quite a lot of dog health and welfare research. So they're not just about churning out these creatures, they're involved in the care of them as well. And they also are involved quite heavily in human eye health research. So it's a massive organisation and doing a heck of a lot more than just furry four paws. And I say just, that's not the right term, but you know what I mean. For those of you that have never heard of a buddy dog, I think there's a picture on screen. There he is, yeah. That's a young lad working a buddy dog around a supermarket. As you can see, the buddy dog wears the blue coat. Some of them, I think this lad is actually holding a lead, and there's another lead going off the picture. That will be being held by an adult. And the boy, I think, is using a white cane as well. So that dog will be most likely there to give him confidence. There are some buddy dogs that have the white cape, and they actually have a handle going across the dog's shoulders so the child can lean on that and hold on that for stability and confidence. And they'll be led around, but the relationship is just awesome with these guys. It really is absolutely amazing, but it's mainly about giving them confidence and stopping them being bullied at school, which happens painfully often. It's horrible. Right, what I'm actually going to do, that's just some sort of basic facts and figures around guide dogs. There are some information leaflets at the back of the table as you go out. If you want to take any of those, please feel free. That's all there. What we're actually going to do is just show you a brief video in a moment. And while we're doing that, if I can just have a couple of volunteers. I've got these boxes of sections of drinking straw. If you can just, we'll get volunteers just to pass those round. And thank you, brilliant, one each side, or whatever. Just take one of those and just hold on to it, don't squish it or anything, all will become clear. I will make it clear, but just a few minutes. This is an official Guide Dogs video, just to give you an overview.
Down to about 2.
For Ian, the outside world can be overwhelming. Half of the 380,000 blind and partially sighted people in the UK never go out alone.
Relying on other people is very frustrating because you're not your own person. Having a guide dog, you are your own person, you are in control. I wouldn't want to be without one.
Having a guide dog does give you an extra edge. You can get from A to B much more confidently, as you don't have to worry about all the obstacles in your path.
The guide dog has given me confidence. It got me into walking the fells. You enjoy it because you're doing things that you never thought you would be able to do. You feel exhilarated by it, yeah.
Nothing can be impossible with being blind. Nothing. If you're that determined, there's no reason that you shouldn't be able to do it just because you can't see. Wee's not just my eyes, she's not just a dog, she's my companion, and she's part of me completely.
The Guide Dog service receives no government funding.
Every penny that we raise is directly through fundraising or through legacies, and we couldn't survive without those.
Guide Dogs need your support to continue this remarkable work.
Today is going to be our first walk and only. It's just me and my girl. First stage of getting my independence back.
You can donate money, fundraise, organise an event, volunteer, or leave a legacy in your will. Whichever you choose, you'll be helping someone on their amazing journey to independence.
Talks about an amazing journey. It is an amazing journey. It's an incredible life-changing experience. The estimated average cost of the lifetime of a working guide dog is £50,000. That takes in encompassing the breeding, the puppy raising, all the vet bills, all the food, the training, the harness, the support that goes on behind the scenes as well. £50,000. But actually, you could put another 1,000 noughts on the end of that price and it wouldn't begin to touch what this lad is worth to me and what he's done for me. It really is quite incredible. So basically, a little bit about us. First of all, actually, can I ask how many of you have actually had a chance to read the Waterways World magazine article last November? A few of you, okay. I believe there are still back copies available if you want it. It was the November last year edition of Waterways World magazine. And that was where this seminar has come from, basically. So you may be able to get hold of a back copy. Whether they've got them at the Waterways World stand, I'm not sure, but you can go and check. And if not, they can be ordered. Very brief summary. We first fell in love with the concept of living afloat back in 2008. And at that time, our circumstances meant that living afloat was an absolutely impossible dream. We were, sort of snowed under with all sorts of commitments and debts and mortgages and jobs and children and all kinds of things. It was absolutely mission impossible at that time. And we accepted that it was impossible at that time. But the dream continued to grow, and it became more than just a dream, it became a real yearning. The more we came anywhere near the waterways, the more we wanted to live on the waterways. And that just grew and grew and grew, even though we weren't actually able to do very much on the waterways. I think the nearest we had to a boat was an inflatable kayak. But we still thoroughly enjoyed getting that out and going on the canal for a paddle or just walking along the canal, and it was just a massive yearning on our part. But of course that dream was really dashed when my eyesight started to fail in 2011. And just to give a very brief account of that, I was actually born with no functional eyesight in my left eye, but that actually never caused me a problem. I had a career in pharmacy, I was a driver, I just led a normal life. The only thing I couldn't do was play ball sports. That was fine by me. I really wasn't bothered by that. But then in July 2011, while I was driving, I had a near miss which frightened the life out of me, because simply I hadn't seen something coming from my right hand side until it appeared in front of me. It was a person actually, I should say it, but it was a person. And that really scared me. So to cut a very long story very, very short, I went to the opticians, had a field of vision sight test. They referred me to the hospital, and by the end of September I was registered blind. So obviously I surrendered my driving licence, you'll be glad to know. That wasn't wise to keep hold of that. Over the next few months, my vision still continued to deteriorate, and that came down to, it's pretty much stabilised at the moment, at about 2% of a normal field of vision. And that's where your drinking straws will come in. Just to give you some sort of idea, if you take that section of drinking straw and place it between your ring and your middle finger, where your rings go, right at the base, close your fingers around it, cover one eye, and look through that straw. That gives you some sort of idea of the kind of pinhole of vision I've got. It doesn't give a true demonstration, because of course that's not accounting for the fact that eyeballs move and take in more than you will actually get by moving your hand and your head around like that, but it gives some sort of idea. Coming up on the screen is perhaps another reasonably effective demonstration. When a normal sighted person walks into a room, that's roughly what I believe you would see. You just walk in and your eyes are taking in that picture because you've got that reasonably panoramic view. My view when I first walk into a room is something along the lines of that is I would walk in, scan around the room, and that's roughly what I would take in. And then the third view is when I've actually done that scan, my eyes would home in on the brightest point, which was the TV screen, and that gives some idea of what I will actually see if I'm actually focusing on that TV. In fact, I think that's marginally better because there's a bit more shadowing. I've actually got nothing around the outside, just that pinhole. So if I focus on the TV, nothing else exists in the view. So just to give a rough demonstration, as I say, it's very hard to depict it to other people, but it gives some sort of idea. Excuse me. At night, I'm totally blind. If there are any, generally in sort of failing light, my vision has gone anyway. I cannot see. I can't see all of you in here because the light level is too dingy, and I've got light coming towards me, so I really can't see any of you. I've no idea how many of you there are here, but that's fine. I don't mind. If there's, say, car headlights coming towards me, that stars out completely and utterly obliterates any view that I've got at all. So it's either pitch black or starred out with a bright light, so nothing at night time. And I think that gives a little bit of an idea there. My colour vision is fading. I certainly didn't appreciate the autumn glory last year. It's just kind of muddy. The colour differentiation isn't really there. That actually first became apparent to me when somebody pointed out that Tim was wearing odd socks. I paired them up and I was convinced they were the same colour, and apparently they were a very different colour. So he now pairs his own socks and it's fine. So it's fine. But I do have good eyes days and bad eyes days, and very much influenced by stress and tiredness. On a good eyes day, I can still read reasonably clearly, although I can't read a magazine or a newspaper. Black print on white backgrounds moves and is wobbly, I can't cope with it. So I read with adaptations. So generally, that's really good, and an iPad is an incredibly invaluable piece of kit. I blow the font size up and I have yellow font on a blue background, and that actually I can cope with. That works quite nicely. I think that's font size 26 on there, and that I can handle. That's okay, that's comfortable. But I'm learning to use audio books. I've now got a computer that has got a screen reader on it, so when somebody sends me an email, a sort of electronic voice reads it to me, so that I can actually sort of take that in, and I'm learning to use that kind of software. But on a bad eyes day, which is really when the computer and the screen reader and things like that come in, I can see virtually nothing. I may as well be viewing the world through the moving canal water. It's murky and it's muddy and everything is wobbling. It's really, really peculiar, most disorientating. It's incredible. So basically, yeah, that just gives a very rough outline. The medics have told me to expect my vision to go to totality. But they don't know that for definite. I don't know that. I kind of have to believe that that's not going to happen. It's stabilised where it is at the moment, and I kind of have a belief that it's going to stay that way. We'll see. But anyway, you know, with that happening, really, eyesight gone, dream dashed, living afloat. You know, that would be insane. Absolutely crazy, so dangerous, so impossible. So we really felt that dream was completely blown apart. And I, partly as a result of that, and partly just generally, became quite down in the dumps. I became increasingly reclusive. I was actually working at the time. I was working as a receptionist, and I came to the point where, on a day at work, I would prefer to stay at my desk for 14 hours, doing something that I could actually get on with, because I could focus on the computer screen, I could answer the phone, I could do things there. But to get up and go for a walk at lunchtime, to go around to the shop to get something for lunch, no way. Because I'd be falling over the curbstones, I'd be tripping over paving slabs, I'd be walking into trees, dustbins, anything like that. So it was safer not to. On days at home, I would sit at home and go without that pint of milk rather than try to get down the road to the local shop to get it. Crossing the road became absolutely terrifying because I've got no concept of perspective. I don't know whether that car coming towards me is doing 2 miles an hour, 200 miles an hour, or is actually stationary. It's a car in the distance somewhere. I've got no concept of if there's a line across the pavement in front of me. Is it a crack? Is it a curb? Is it the top of a flight of stairs? I don't know. Obviously in familiar environments I'd know whether it's a curb or a flight of stairs, but to give you some idea, it was really quite scary. So I actually became really miserable. I really sank into the depths of depression, and it wasn't a nice place to be. But then, again, very long story, very, very short, along came this miraculous lump of black fur. And his life, his arrival in my life just utterly transformed my life. It really did. The first walk that I went out on him, the demonstration walk, the day that the trainer brings the dog to find out whether you're a suitable match or not, after a whole matching process that's gone on. That walk with him was the first time I've ever picked up the handle of a guide dog harness and walked behind a dog or beside a dog. And it just blew my mind. It utterly blew my mind. I got to the bottom of our road where normally I would have walked down there. If I'd have walked down there, I would have walked into hedges and fence posts and car bumpers because the pavement was quite narrow and cars hanging over. It was bin day, so there would have been loads of wheelie bins going down there, and I always ended up with bruises across this bit of my arm because that's where wheelie bins come to on a short bump. I always bin day, I ended up with a really sore arm walking down the road. I got to the bottom of the road that day and the trainer stopped us and said, "How do you feel?" And I went, "It's amazing!" I just burst into floods of tears. It just absolutely blew my mind because I realised I got to that bottom of that road and I hadn't touched a thing. I really hadn't touched a thing, and it was bin day, so there were wheelie bins everywhere. There were loads of cars parked with their bumpers across the pavement. But this dog that, you know, to me just looked like a normal dog that was cute and cuddly and everything, he'd actually effortlessly taken me around all those things, and I really hadn't touched a thing. It was just astounding. We finished the walk. We were actually continuing on round the block. We came back. she said, "You're a match, would you like him?" I thought, well, is water wet? Of course I wanted him. We did the training, which entails 9 days in a hotel of really intensive training of bonding with the dog and getting to know the basics of working. Then some time at home, working around familiar routes around. On the 8th of November, she said those magic words after an assessment walk, "You're qualified. You're a qualified guide dog partnership. Well done." You know, absolutely incredible words. I can still hear her saying those words now. It was fantastic. Over the course of time, we learnt to walk all the routes around our hometown, around the area. Oakley and I came to the point where, for me, having gone to a point of not going out at all, I actually came to the point of walking 6 to 8 miles a day with him, just for the sheer pleasure of going for a walk or being able to go somewhere. And rather than get the bus, I would actually walk, because it was so nice to be able to do that. It was just incredible. I lost weight, added bonus, that's fine. But more importantly, I regained my self-respect and more. I regained my independence and more, because I suddenly became no longer dependent on a car or other people. I could do it, me. And I just regained my life and more. And that's all down to a black Labrador. It's absolutely amazing, and there's absolutely no looking back on that. We had the opportunity of a couple of holidays. We're members of the Boaters Christian Fellowship, and we're sort of amongst friends within the BCF. There were a couple of people that wanted their boat moved, or were willing enough, daft enough to lend us their boat for a brief holiday. One of those holidays was actually coming to Crick last year, the year before last, when we borrowed a friend's boat and moved it for them to come up here, or borrowed it to come to Crick. And that was like our inaugural test to see whether I could actually do it with Oakley. Whether adapting a guide dog to working on a towpath would be a feasible option. And of course, the evidence is here. He proved beyond all doubt that he could. And actually, the friend that lent us the boat is a real health and safety freak, and he came along to check us up. When we were doing the first flight of locks, he just appeared and said, "I'm worried about you, I want to check you." But by the time we finished that flight of locks, he was going away smiling and said, "You're fine, it's great. That dog is amazing." So that's what we did. So the dream basically was rekindled. And you know, it was totally a demonstration that yes, we can do it, and why should anything stop us now? Let's go for it. But of course, at that stage, it was still an impossible dream. So the dream continued to grow. But in February 2013, I lost my job because of the deterioration in my eyesight. And actually, looking back, that was probably no bad thing. It was a bit of a blessing in disguise, because that demonstrated how much the stress and tiredness was affecting adversely my eyesight. So it was a blessing in disguise. Didn't seem like it at the time. Then in December 2013, Tim was made redundant, and that kind of put us in the situation of re-evaluating our situation completely. And we actually came to the realisation that previously was unknown to us, or complicated situation. We realised we were able to sell the house with enough equity to clear the mortgage, clear the debts, and buy a boat. Only a second-hand one, but that's fine. And you know, that's absolutely great. So that's what we did. February 2014, we sold the house. March 2014, we bought the boat, and yes, we were homeless hobos for 3 weeks. We dossed on a friend's spare room, and that was fine. But we have absolutely no regrets whatsoever. It's been the most incredible journey. And Oakley has just been the rock in all of that. He has adapted fantastically to working in a different environment. Guide Dogs UK have been stunned. When I actually first applied for a guide dog, we did kind of, in general conversation, say to them, we do actually hope one day to live aboard a narrowboat. I don't think they took us seriously, because I don't think it was noted. And they did actually say to me that if we'd have been living aboard a boat when we applied for a guide dog, we would have been declined, because it's completely outside of their experience, and they can't see the picture at all. But they've actually been superb. They've adapted, they've supported us, and they really have been absolutely brilliant and come along with us on the journey effectively, which has been just great. But he has adapted to working on the towpath. In town, a guide dog is actually routinely trained to work in straight lines, a bit like Pac-Man basically. It's just to work in straight line principles, so you get to a curb and you go left or right or whatever. Obviously on a towpath, there's not much variation, so we've adapted in that sense. But in town, he would be guiding me around dustbins and lampposts and broken pavements and street signs and all that kind of thing. On the towpath, he's guiding me around the tree roots and the overgrown hedges and the crumbling banks and the mooring pins and the bollards and even the muddy puddles he takes me around. It's amazing. He's actually quite gallant. He wades through the mud and I go around the outside. It's brilliant. But really, his work on the towpath is primarily relatively straightforward, and it's just the bit between the locks. If you deviate too far to the right or left, you get a face full of hedge or very wet. So he doesn't actually have much deviation to do, much work to do. So it's quite relaxed work for him, but in a different way. And he's adapted to that absolutely brilliantly. I've actually trained him to find the next lock. So we'll set off on harness. He's always on my left-hand side, because that's what they do. And I will say to him, let's go find the next lock. He's off and he's gone and he's trotting along. When we get to that lock, we'll pause and I will just scan around the scene. I mean, there's not much variation on a lock. It's a rectangular hole with a gate at either end, isn't it? So there's not an awful lot of variation, but I'm scanning around to see, is there a bollard I can secure him to, or do I need to secure him to the gate post, the beam handle? And that's what I do. If there's a bollard there, I will actually say to him at that point, find the bollard, and he will trot over to the bollard and sit by it, demand his treat, because he's been a clever boy and found the bollard. And then I just loop his lead over the bollard and leave him secure there. He will sit quietly, sometimes. No, he does, he sits quietly, and he just waits while I actually work the locks. I've still got just enough vision that I can find my way around the top of the lock. Again, as I say, there's not that much variation. Maybe occasionally I might open the wrong paddle first because I missed the fact that there's a ground paddle there or whatever, but it's not the end of the world. And if there's not a bollard, then I will actually loop his lead over the handle that's on the top of the beam, just to make sure that he doesn't wander off, because he is a bit of a tinker. And if there's another dog coming along, he'll think, playtime, and he's still got his harness on and he's really not meant to do that. So it's just safer to keep him secure, really. The biggest adaptation in the sense of my working on the locks is, unless I really, really have to, I do not cross the gates. If there's a bridge, then yes, obviously I'll go across, but I don't actually climb across the gates unless I have to. So either on a big double lock, we only work one side and we accept it takes a bit longer. What's the rush, we're voting. It's not a problem. Or otherwise the teamwork comes in and Tim will work the offside while I work the near side, and we carry on through the locks. That's the biggest adaptation as far as we're concerned. So obviously if we're doing double locks, or the big wide locks, if we can share with another boater, then obviously that's a huge bonus. Even more of a bonus to us than it is to most boaters, because it just sort of helps with the workings. Once we've moored up in the evening or for a few days or whatever we do, Tim will very often take Oaks for a leisurely walkies in the evening on lead. And he'll take him into the nearest town or the village or wherever we are, and he'll show him the key places. So he might show him where the supermarket is, or where the hairdresser is on the rare event. I might actually visit one of them, or the butcher or dentist, whatever. You know, he will actually show him where it is, and Oates will then, after that, lead me to it. He will take me there. And a brilliant example of that actually is here in Crick, because last year we came back here after a year of not having been anywhere near the place. And I got off the boat, put Oaks on harness, and said, come on, let's go find the shop. And he took me faultlessly. I didn't say another word to him after that, and he took me faultlessly along the towpath up the road, and we found the co-op. He remembered it from a year before. Absolutely amazing. But he did, and it's great. And like the hairdressers here in Crick as well, Tim last year allowed me to go to the hairdressers, and I went up there. The night before, Tim actually walked him up there and took him to the door of the hairdressers in the village and just said, hairdressers. The following morning, I was able to go up there and say, let's go find the hairdressers, faultlessly, straight to the door. And he actually even pushed the door open for me. So, quite amazing. We can go into any town in Britain, whether we've been there before or not, find the main shopping centre, and he seems to be able to sniff out certain shops. I can say to him, find Specsavers, Not that we've spent an awful lot of time in Specsavers, but we are very familiar with the place. And he will actually go to the door of Specsavers, he will find it if there is one there. He will actually find Costa. That's not that we spend a vast fortune in Costa, but that's because Debbie, our eldest daughter, used to work in Costa in Worthing, and I think he became kind of familiar with the place, and it's a word that fits, so he will find us a Costa and try to lead us in there as well every time. And if we just say to him, let's go shopping, he will find a Lidl's or an Aldi or a Morrison's or Sainsbury's or Tesco's. Note the order of priority there. But yeah, he will actually find those places, and a few others as well. I think he can sniff out Boots and a couple of other key shops and that kind of thing. Haven't taught him to find a pub yet. Need to work on that one. But he slips really seamlessly between the adapted work on the towpath and the normal work in town. He just seems to just take it in his stride and do it. Absolutely amazing. When we're actually working on the towpath, there are a few adaptations we've had to make. One of them is the distraction of other dogs. A guide dog working around town is not supposed to be distracted by anything, in theory, and certainly not by other dogs. And puppy walkers will confirm to me you're supposed to keep the puppy away from other dogs and tell them to leave and everything. I can tell him to leave until he's blue in the face, or until I'm blue in the face. Sometimes he does, and if he does actually leave the dog, and I praise him for it, he will then sit down and wait till he gets his treat because he's been a good boy to leave. But that's fine. On the towpath, it's actually almost impossible to avoid contact with another dog because A, it's very often a narrow path, so you've got to kind of almost brush against each other as you pass, or the other dog is off lead, and obviously there's nothing that anybody can do about that, and that's fine. The dog's fully entitled to be off lead. It's not a problem. It's having fun. It's behaving itself. So what I've had to do on the towpath there is to train him that it's okay to meet and greet, but not to play when you've got your harness on. Because, obviously I don't want to be sort of him being so distracted that he's bouncing around like a loony and we both end up going splash. And he's actually adapted to that fairly well. The other thing I've had to do is in the bits of towpath where it really is a narrow path to walk on and you've got overgrown hedges and crumbling banks and things, it's not always wide enough to actually walk with him by my side, on my left-hand side on harness. So what I've had to do there is I just loop his lead through the top end of his harness handle. If he wasn't asleep, I'll pull him out and show you, but I'll show you later. And I then ask him to go ahead, and I hold him on a very long lead. He's got a ridiculously long lead. But that's why, is because I then walk behind him and I say to him, go ahead. And he will actually walk ahead of me and I can follow his bum and I can listen to what his bell's doing as well, so I can hear where he's going and follow him that way. He will still lead me round the hazards as long as I actually follow him obediently. So that's sort of minor adaptations, but it's all based on the original basic training. So all in all, really, he's actually proved to be a very happy and very willing boat dog, and he even helps us to moor the boat up now. Follow him on the rope. It's a great game. When he's off duty, he's a regular Labrador with rules, but he is a regular Labrador, and he really is a Labrador, and he really is a character. Any of you that follow his Facebook blog will know he confesses daily sins because he is an absolute toe rag sometimes. He is a terrible food thief. He's a Labrador, it goes without saying almost, but he has stolen legs of lamb, joints of beef, loaves of bread, plates of cheese, an entire gatto out of a friend's kitchen. He's even followed a friend's whippet through the dog flap, nicked an entire gatto out of its box, and basically taught the whippet to do the same, and she had never done such things before. So yeah, I mean, he is a pickle. When we go home to my parents, he'll go into Mum and Dad's kitchen and come back wearing the bin lid because he's been raiding the bin, and he's going, no, I didn't do that. He is a regular pickle. When we were having our boat refitted, we were living on a succession of different hire boats. We're now just about getting to the point where we've taught him that it's not acceptable to hop onto any boat you fancy. He's beginning to respond to it, stay off. Most of the time he does, but not every time, not every time. There seem to be certain smells emanating from certain boats that he just finds utterly irresistible. The other thing with him is he's just absolutely convinced that everybody wants to be his best buddy. And it doesn't matter whether it's a human that doesn't do dogs, it doesn't matter if it's a snarling Rottweiler, a snapping terrier or anything else. He's just like, yeah, tail wagging, I want to be friends, and he'll go bounding up to anybody. He has no concept of aggression. So that snarling Rottweiler or yapping terrier or whatever, sorry, that's a horrible sweeping generalisation, but you know what I mean. He has no concept that they're not being friendly. He just wants to go in and play. So we do have to watch him a little bit. He has had a few bloody noses from that sort of confrontation, actually mainly with cats. But people very often raise comments and say, we hear it quite a lot, it's not fair. Guide dogs are always working. They never have time off. They're always on harness. They don't get to be a real dog. They don't have a real life. I'm sorry, but that is so wrong, so utterly wrong. When a guide dog is working, he's walking. What does a dog love doing the most? It's walking. He's walking with a purpose. He's an intelligent dog. He needs a purpose, otherwise he's more likely to get into mischief. It's a perfect combination, really. And actually, that's when he's working. When he's not working, he's off duty. He's a regular Labrador around town, with some rules, admittedly, but then that rules and discipline is needed for any good dog owner to do that anyway. I'm just fortunate enough somebody's done it for me because I haven't got a clue how to train a dog. But they're extremely well cared for. They're regularly assessed by vets, more often than most pet dogs. They're assessed by the Guide Dogs Association welfare staff. And we're taught as blind people to give them a regular health check ourselves as well. We're supposed to groom them every day and give them basically a massage every day so that you're feeling every lump and bump on the body. I have to say that discipline isn't quite as good as every day, but I do it very regularly, and it's a special time, it's a bonding time, it's lovely. So really, I don't think a guide dog could have a happier life. And you know, I certainly couldn't have a happier life without him. Without him, I really could not be doing what we're doing. There's no way that we could be living this life that we're living. And actually, I dread to think where I would be without him today. I really do. It just doesn't bear thinking about. After we finished here at Crick this weekend, we're actually going to begin our journey south to Bath, or Bath, depending where you come from. And it's Bath if you're in Bath, isn't it? So, I guess. We're actually doing a sponsored walk, and we're walking the length of the Kennet and Avon from Bath to Reading. And I believe that's about 75 miles and 95 lots, something along those lines. We're doing the whole lot. The idea of that is that there is no way in a million years that we can begin to afford to repay anything of the value of this dog to Guide Dogs UK. But doing this walk is my way of doing something to try to give back and to say thank you. And the general idea is that along the way, we've got the route planned out, and along the way we'll be stopping at various key places to meet up with the local Guide Dogs teams, to do events, to raise funds, to raise awareness, to educate people. I'm hoping that people will actually come and walk with us as well, so you know, other dog owners doing a Dogs Unite walk as they call it, and that kind of thing, matching mile for mile. There's all sorts of ways of doing that. If you happen to be in the Bath area or the Kennet and Avon area in July, please come along and visit, come along and support us. It will be fabulous to see you. On the table at the back there are some of our business cards, if you like. They're not business cards, but they're, you know what I mean, that kind of thing. It's got Oakley's Facebook page on there. If you haven't already done it, link on, follow his Facebook page, so click like page on the picture. And then sometime in the next few days I will put an updated timeline of the walk, which will give you the clues as to what we're doing and when. If you can get along to one of those, please do. It would be fabulous. There's the option to sponsor us if you'd like to. I'm actually aiming, hopefully, to raise £5,000 to name a future life changer, to actually sponsor a guide dog puppy, and that would just be awesome to do that. So if you come, you know, if you're around, please come along. Please sponsor us. That would be brilliant. There's a money box at the back if anybody wants to actually donate anything. There's also some envelopes that you can tick the gift aid box on, so that the Chancellor gives another 25% on what you give. So that's worth doing. I think Tim's going to put up the Just Giving and the Text Giving pages up on screen, but it's all on the website, so check that out there. Before we go into the questions and answers, and please do think of questions and answers. And again, I'll have to ask you to be very un-British. Don't put your hands up, yell out, because I can't actually see you out there. So just yell out. But before we do that, just a very brief video, very amateur shooting, I'm afraid, but we've done it, we've tried it. It's just a little bit about the walk, a little bit about us, and then we'll lead into the question and answer time. Hi, I'm Tracey. I live on a narrow boat named Sally Grantier, along with my husband Tim and Oakley, my black Labrador guide dog. I started to lose my eyesight in 2011, and life actually became pretty horrible. I got pretty down in the dumps, lost confidence to go out. It wasn't safe to go out, and I really did start to hit the depths of depression. Then in 2012, I was given the amazing gift of Oakley, and life just completely and utterly transformed. It was nothing short of miraculous. He gave me back my confidence, he gave me back my self-esteem, he gave me back my independence, and so much more than that. He is an amazing companion. He's transformed not only my life, but of many people around us as well. There's absolutely no way in a million years that we can begin to repay a fraction of the cost of actually having Oakley. And actually, he's worth a million times more than £50,000 to me anyway. So what I can do is what I'm going to do, which is to do something to repay in a different way. And the plan is to spend July walking the length of the Kennet and Avon Canal with Oakley. And the aim of that is to walk from Bath to Reading, all the way along the full length of the Kennet and Avon, starting on 4th of July in central Bath in Green Park, and aiming to end in Reading Town Centre on the 25th of July. And along the way, we're going to be doing lots of fundraising and meeting up with various different guide dogs local teams to increase awareness of what guide dogs do, hopefully recruit some volunteers, educate some people, and just give people a little bit of an idea about what guide dogs is all about. In doing this walk, I'm aiming to raise £5,000 to name a new guide dog puppy, the beginning of another life changer. And I just really urge you, if you possibly can, just consider visiting the Just Giving page and give as generously as you can. If you can gift aid it as well, then so much the better, because the Chancellor will add a bit to it at no extra cost to you, and that's really worthwhile, really valuable. Please consider doing that. Support us in any way you can. Come and visit us on the walk. And yeah, just thank you. Without Oakley, I dread to think where I'd be. I certainly wouldn't be living this lovely life on a narrow boat. Please support us if you can. Thank you.